I'm Heavy J, and
I'm Big Mama.
I'm the Bog Wizard.
And this is Fat Dragon. So today we're going to discuss some questions that we found on the internet concerning Dungeons and Dragons. So I thought I'd just go through these and maybe we can just discuss these together.
Sounds good.
All right. So the first one's from Dustin. He says, new DM here. Is it okay to let your players pick up weapons dropped by defeated enemies? What do you think about that?
Absolutely. I've been known to do that more than a few times.
I mean, that's pretty typical of RPGs, is to loot your bad guys. So I think you should be able to pick up like armor and weapons and money off of them. I mean, that's just standard, isn't it?
Yeah, you're not looting the bad guys. Like, you're missing half the game.
Yeah, you're just doing it wrong. I totally agree. You know, I think a lot of times, you know, in the games that, you know, that I have DM'd for, I notice that a lot of times that the players will go in and they'll, you know, loot the bad guys for any coins that are in their pockets, you know, like gold and platinum and copper and all that kind of jazz. And then they'll, you know, search their bodies for magic items and gems and things like that. But what really gets overlooked, I think, are the weapons and the armor. All that can be, you know, taken and looted and sold when you get back into town. So, yeah, I think that a lot of times that people are just, you know, they're leaving money on the table.
Yeah, it depends on the weapons, because so often, you know, like lower level, and I can't even say henchmen, you know, the lower level pawn guys don't have very good weapons. They're usually rusty swords and not going to be worth the carrying weight, depending on your character, of course.
Encumbrance, good point.
So it depends on the situation. It also depends on, you know, what weapons I have versus how good their weapons look. I mean, I had a character that broke weapons, well, almost constantly. So I always picked up extra weapons just to have extra weapons.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah? Okay. All right, the next question comes to us from Aaron. Help! I accidentally gave one of my level 2 players plate armor. I wanted to curse it instead of taking it away from him. Is it fair, as this was my mistake?
No, that's not fair. That's not fair. You just need to compensate for the it's plate armor. Is it magic? Like,
yeah,
it's just plate armor. It's not that big of a thing. I wouldn't think.
Yeah, 100%. Now, plate armor is worth a lot. I think. What does it sell for in the player's handbook?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head, but I know the fighter in my party would know off the top of his head.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that.
Because he wants it. I can't wear it. So.
In our weekly Wednesday night game, Elfo, who is our paladin, is always talking about, you know, trying to get enough loot together that he can get into town and find an armorer and buy some plate armor from him. And I think it was going for like 1,500 gold.
Yeah,
I don't remember the cost off the top of my head, but yeah, it's quite pricey. But yeah, you make a mistake like that, it's okay. Absolutely, 100%. Whether you should curse it or not, yeah, I think it'd be a big mistake. I think you're sending the wrong message to your players that, oh, you know, if you find something really cool, that it's going to be taken. Yeah, it's going to be taken away from you. Yeah, it's kind of not a good move. But that's my opinion anyway. What do you think about that?
I mean, it depends, because if chronically in the world stuff like that is cursed, and like in the dungeons, like where some of the objects are cursed, it would be fine. But like if you're doing it out of spite, that's not cool. Yeah. I mean, if anything, if your players get too tough, you could just beef the bad guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I can just do the reverse, give them, you know, one of the bad guys plate armor. I mean, if you curse works in your storyline, I could see cursing it, but not just because, oh no, I don't want him to have something that good. Yeah, that's wrong. I agree, Jordan.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, dungeon masters, you know, especially new dungeon masters, make mistakes like that all the time. I remember when I was starting off, you know, I would bring in like magic items, and you know, I would just basically overpower the players too early. So that's one of the hard lessons I learned when I was starting off.
Boy, I miss those days.
Yes, I bet you do. The next question comes from, it looks like Sandy. Hi, dudes. I like that. Just a question as something happened in a campaign I'm a player in. How many times would you let a player throw dice for a strength check to pull out a sword that was thrust into a wooden table? So I imagine what's going on here is there was a fight going on, and maybe she rolled a nat 1 or something, and the DM ruled that, you stuck your sword into the table.
Oh.
Maybe that's the situation, or... But
if it's during a fight, let them do it as many times as they want. It's their action they're using.
Exactly, 100%. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think, it evens out if they just take the action, because that's what they do for an action, their turn.
Yeah.
So instead of attacking, they're trying to pull their sword out of their table.
Yeah.
But of course, if it's not in the middle of a fight, it depends on the circumstances, right? If you're in a dungeon and they just want this sword or they want to see what it is, do something to create a timer situation. You hear a noise, something's coming. Do you want, and then they can make the decision to waste that time in action.
Yeah, as long as there's not no doom clock or underclock that's running in the dungeon, like during combat, or if you know that you can hear a monster approaching or something like that. I would. This is how I would do it. I would let the player in a non-combat situation have maybe one attempt at it. I would set the DC at whatever I think would be fair for that as a dungeon master, and then they could have one attempt. And if they failed it, then maybe we could set up a situation where they fail forward at a penalty for a lower DC. That's one option. So let's say that it's a DC 14 athletics to pull it out, and they fail. Maybe we let him try again at a DC 12 athletics, and if he passes that one or she passes that one, maybe they fall backwards, and take a little bit of damage, or break a potion that they were carrying with them in their backpack or something like that. That's one way of handling it. The other way of handling it is you let them bring in somebody to assist them, and then we can now have that other player roll the dice at advantage using whatever their strength is.
Yeah, I gotta say, I can't imagine, thinking of our own gaming group, I can't imagine that lasting for too many attempts, because the rest of the players are like, okay, move on. What are you doing? How can I help? Let's get this done and let's go do something else. Do you really want that sword? Come on, we'll find a new one. They don't want to sit there.
Absolutely. So, if you're letting them keep rolling over and over and over again in a non-combat situation, eventually they're going to roll the correct number and pull it out. So you might as well just give it to them, right?
Yeah, make it a little easier, move the game along. Because once everybody's replenished their snacks and they're tired of waiting, that's not going to fly for long.
Yeah, 100%. All right, let's move on to Richard. Now, Richard asks a lot of questions here because... Well, I'll just show you what he wrote. He says, hoping for some thoughts on my modifications to a 5e rules for a one-shot. So he's putting together a one-shot, which I love doing one-shots. They're a lot of fun. These rules won't be used in a standard 5e game. As a player of 2nd edition, so he's been around a while since Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition, I want to add some old-school inspiration to new players that challenge their thoughts on 5e system and pose the risk of death. This is a common complaint that I have heard about 5e from a lot of other old school dungeon masters, is that 5e is just too forgiving. It's just almost impossible to die. So I think Richard has put down some thoughts to kind of ramp that up. And here's the first one: death saves. Which was never around in 1E, which I've been playing since 1E, and I don't think it was around in 2E either, if I remember right. But anyway, he says, death save throws. The DC is now a DC 13. On ending the unconscious conditions, you are incapacitated for 1 round. So he's basically saying that you have to roll a DC 13 instead of the normal DC 10 as a death save. And I think you only get one shot at it. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think it's more generous than our DM, wouldn't you say, Bog? As a fellow player who recently had their character die in lava, I believe it was we died in last month. Yeah.
I think we just.
I would appreciate the chance because we don't get that.
Well, to be kind of fair, there, Big Mama, when you were jumping the lava, it was a DC 14 check.
You're right. It was two checks
to
that we
check.
failed to die.
And when you failed, I let it fail forward to a DC 12, which was even easier. But on top of that, to be even more fair, you guys had a way to cross all that lava without hardly doing any checks at all.
Get into that because I don't want to start. Yeah,
and
that was
one of the players gave that chance away to a dragon so they could avoid a fight.
So anyway, we're not going to get into that argument again.
Yeah.
But so you're right. It was a 14 and then a 12, and he wants to give them a what?
13.
13.
The DC is 13. Just a straight 13. You know, just like the regular death save where you do a DC 10, it's not tied to any kind of ability or skill or anything like that. It's just roll the die. It's a save.
You get one save.
Yeah, you get one save. So yeah, that's harsh, but
it's better than none because you're unconscious on the ground. So I think most parties have like somebody who can do spare the dying or a medicine check or something to save them. So you get that extra round for that possibility as well by giving them that round. And it ramps up so you don't have the full 3 saves.
Right.
Which I find that, and tell me if you agree, Bog, that we don't usually use all 3 saves, right? Because by 3 rounds, something has happened. You've finished the last of the bad guys and everybody's come and helped you, or, you know, your healer in the party's come and done something. I know we don't have a cleric in our party, but we have multiple players that have different abilities to kind of cover that gap. So I feel like it's not always in one round. It would definitely ramp up that hurry up and get there, which could be really hard because, you know, sometimes the cleric's already gone that round and you need the extra time. Mm-hmm. So it would be very stressful, but I don't know. I think I'd like, I don't know. I'm torn.
I know personally, you know, I'm not a player. I'm a DM. I'm the forever DM. But I like that kind of tension. You know, it's very thematic. It's like watching a movie, you know, so to speak. A good movie anyway. You know, I've seen those movies where, you know, the bad guy gets shot, he falls over dead, but the good guy gets shot and he somehow manages to linger and linger forever before finally passing away, giving a giant soliloquy about, you know, his life and everything.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it would depend on the circumstances. If we're just talking a normal fight, you're on the ground, it's not horrible.
Right.
Yeah. I like the 3 saves just because you get extra time. I could see cutting it back to 2. I'm not sure I like 1. And then on top of it only being 1, it being a harder roll is scary, right? Because if they have to roll and nobody's gotten to them by the time it's gone around. It also depends on how many players you have on the table, actually. That would be a huge impact to it. So, yeah, I don't know. I have too many questions.
Yeah, I think today's 5e D&D, and I kind of share Richard's concerns here about 5e, the way that it's out there. I think it coddles the players way too much. And I've heard a lot of other dungeon masters, old school dungeon masters, I should clarify, speak to this. You know, back when I was playing, when I first started playing as a player, your player, you know, if they got hit and they went down to, you know, less than 0 hit points, they were gone. They were just dead. That was the end of it. In fact, my very first player that I've ever created, the dungeon master had set up a situation where when my player was sleeping because he was too OP for a level 1, which is ridiculous.
Level 1?
Yeah, he is a level 1. He had him killed in his sleep. I just thought the whole thing was kind of chicken.
That reminds me of the first question.
And it almost
cursing the armor,
right? And a bad DM like that can almost sour a person's attitude towards the game. So you got to be careful with this kind of stuff. I mean, you want that element of death, always, nipping at your heels while you're playing. But you got to find that fine balance, I think.
Yeah.
But I don't see a problem with this. If this is the kind of game he wants to run, then, give it a try. Talk to his players. Let's find out what they think about it.
I was just going to say, it totally depends on the players and what they're okay with. And if it's a house rule and you're getting the players buy-in on it and they're good with it, that's good. Mm-hmm. But if he's just...
He said this was for a one-shot, too. So, this is kind of an experimental thing. So what I like to do with a lot of my experimental rules, rules that I have, when I house rule something or I think of something, this be a really cool mechanic, I will have it in one of my adventures in my campaign as what I call a special scenario rule, as you guys know.
Yeah.
So, and then we run the entire adventure, which usually takes, an adventure usually lasts anywhere from 3 to 5 sessions. And we really kind of get a feel for the rule. And then if we like it, we can make it a permanent rule instead of a special scenario rule. If we hate it,
we don't have to ever see it again.
We don't have to ever see it again. And if it's really terrible, we can get rid of it the same session. So let's be flexible. I mean, that's one of the things that I really love about Dungeons & Dragons is it's so modular. All the rules can be swapped in and out.
But it depends on
the guidelines.
Yeah, 100%.
But it depends on the rule. Because for a one shot, your character dies. It's maybe not so
traumatic.
Yeah, exactly. It's not such a big deal because you were playing this character just for this one session anyway, so you're not attached to them. They're a new character. It's not your regular. You've been playing it for 2 years character, or 4 months, as the case may be. And then
it's your last character that didn't make the lava jump.
Yeah. So it really just depends on the situation. And sometimes that can be sticky with the scenario rules too, because depending on what the rule is, if it's something that you could lose your character, that could be kind of harsh for even a scenario rule. It just depends. But for a one shot, you kind of have a lot more flexibility. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, and I like how he's doing this all as a one shot to test it all out. So that's really clever of him. You can tell by his experience that that he's an experienced DM. Anyway, let's talk about the next one. Instant death. The threshold is now changed to half your maximum hit points rounded down. I don't know what to think about that one.
Threshold. What's that mean?
So let me give you a situation. So let's suppose that you have 20 hit points. As the rule is now, if I'm recalling correctly, because there's so many rules of D&D, that if I was up on a cliff and I fell and I took 25 damage when I hit the ground, or say 20 damage or whatever.
You now have 10 total.
No, now you're dead.
There's no saves?
There's no saves. There's no rolling any death saves at all because you took your maximum hit point damage in that one fall, or sword strike, or whatever the case might be, however you took the damage. He wants to change that so it's even more brutal. So if you're a 20 hit point character, now if you take 10 hit points rounded down, then you're dead. You're just dead.
Wait,
there's no death
saves. You're not at
saves.
full health. Say you have 5 hit points left, but your maximum is 20.
That's right.
And then you take, in this case, 10 hit points of damage. You're -5. That's not really relevant. But you took 10 hit points. You're completely dead. No death saves.
There's no death saves.
Yeah, I hate that.
Yeah, I'm not sure I like that either. I think
I don't like any of that.
Yeah.
Because my hit points are what my hit points are. It shouldn't be relevant to how much damage I could see where it is. Because if you fall off a cliff and your maximum hit points are 20, you're down to 5, and you take 50 damage, you're probably smushed, right?
Yeah, you're just a bag of...
You're not really you didn't take damage. You disintegrated.
Yeah,
so
100%.
I could see that. This is a situation where you need one of those resurrection spells. Are those still a thing? Where you have to have a super high level cleric that can basically
you're dead.
bring you back.
You have to take a death touch. What was it? Save death touch, where they there are clerics that can like resurrect dead.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was.
And they don't even need your
35.
whole body. As you were a cleric and you figured that out.
I wasn't a cleric.
I just need a.
My rogue, but I think this was 35, died, and you only needed a body part that you had to take to a cleric to be resurrected. And my lovely party was like, we're not taking her whole body. That would be a lot of carrying weight. Just cut her thumb off. We could throw it in the backpack. We're good to go.
And that's exactly what they did.
And that's what they did.
What's that show? The Dirty Black Bag?
Yep.
Because a
Because the head
head
weighs less than a
is
body.
lighter than a body. Oh my
And I
gosh.
laughed because I was like, my old D&D group could totally understand this concept.
100%. Suffocating. This is the next one. A creature can hold its breath for a number of rounds equal to 3 plus twice the Constitution modifier, minimum of 18 seconds. Rules for running out of breath and choking are not changed. So this goes to underwater exploration and an underwater adventure. And I believe that the rules as written, and we don't run a whole lot of underwater stuff, so I am really trying to remember the rule here. I think it has to do with the Constitution. And I think it's you get 3 rounds plus the Constitution modifier. And then you start suffocating. At that point, you start suffocating. You're not suffocated. So I don't even know what to do with this one.
Yeah, I don't either. Every time we've ever run into an underwater situation, we usually have a party member that can breathe underwater, or somebody cast a spell or drink a potion, and that's the person that goes underwater. We don't just take the whole party.
Yeah.
We've never had to do that, so I'm not really familiar, honestly.
I think the rules, if I remember right, are really generous for underwater. I mean, it would take a lot to drown somebody. So.
I mean, if you want to make it more realistic, you can have like some sort of rule, like the amount you can breathe is this plus breathe this, and then like if you run out of the number or turns, like you start to like suffocate.
Mm-hmm.
Because realistically, like people can hold their breath for a bit, so if I do this, I'm not immediately suffocating or going to die of lack of oxygen. It's
Yeah.
when I do that for a certain amount of time where I start to like, my body starts to go, okay, nope.
I like how the Constitution is put on it. Now he says the Constitution modifier, which it would be correct. So if you have, I don't know, if say your modifier is +0, which would be like a con of 10 and 11. So that doesn't really bump it. You'd have to kind of have a hard Constitution before you start not having to worry about it. I don't know. Like I said, I really don't know what to think about that. Let's move on to the next one. Resting. We will be using the Dungeon Master Guide variant rules of gritty realism. The variant uses a short rest of 8 hours and a long rest of 7 days. 7 days for a long rest and 8 hours for a short rest. What do you think?
What? Yeah.
I don't know anybody who just like hibernates for 7 days.
Yeah, I don't understand that. That doesn't make any sense to me.
That would kill you in itself. Getting that much sleep at one time.
Well, I don't think it's like
not
actual sleep. It's like you're actually not doing anything strenuous for 7 days. And to recover all of your hit points and all of your spell slots and all that kind of jazz. I don't think I like that rule.
Yeah, I don't. That's. I guess it would depend on the scenario you're running. Do you have that kind of time? Because we never have that kind of time.
Yeah, I don't like that variant whatsoever. I wouldn't put that in my game.
I feel like you're just
because
essentially squashing any chance to rest.
Yeah, if you're in a big dungeon, you're going to have to keep leaving that dungeon and resting for 7 days.
Yeah, and this is a one shot. What's the plan there? How's that going to work? I just don't understand, I guess. I would definitely need more information because I'm a no, which is that.
Yeah, I don't like that rule whatsoever.
Not at all.
I get where he's coming from. He's basically saying that he doesn't want his players to rest at all, except for short rests.
Yeah, but
and
that's
in
not
a one
really the way
shot,
you want to do that, right?
In a one shot, I don't think that's really a problem. The resting situation, I don't think that comes up much, but if you're in like one of my adventures that usually lasts about 3 to 5 sessions, I don't want my players to keep having to come out. Now, I've solved this problem with one of my house rules, which is the underclock rule, where we roll a dice, every time that you rest, and it counts down on the dice. I mean, I can go into the full explanation of that, but that's not really.
We don't do that. Right? That'll take forever.
That would take forever to kind of explain. I mean, it's a simple concept, but it kind of takes a little while to explain.
But I feel like
But there's ways around this.
Most of the time when we're playing, we're in a hurry. So we aren't just resting willy-nilly. Because there's like an impact to the storyline, the reason we're there.
Monsters are hunting you.
Yeah.
The dungeon's alive.
Something's going to happen if we don't get to the goal in time. Yeah, so there's always something happening, so we're not gonna, necessarily willy-nilly take a rest.
I mean, if you want your players to kind of take the dungeon more seriously and like, oh crap, we gotta like use our resting wisely, you could have like a monster encounter die. Like I think is what we do.
Yeah, that's the
and they'll rest, and if like they roll below a 15 or whatever you set it as, they run like a monster wakes them up, and they have to get fighting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this might work in his one shot. I don't know. I haven't seen his one shot. I haven't looked it over, so I have no idea what he has planned. Is this an outdoor adventure where you're traveling for days and days and days across, mountains or a vast desert or whatever he's got in plan, or is this an actual dungeon? But it's an actual dungeon. I don't know how this would work, because in my dungeons, personally, my dungeons are alive, they're active, the monsters are always seeking you guys, and they're always listening for you, and then yes, like you said, there's always some kind of mission or goal that you're trying to complete, and it usually has a timer on it. So yeah, without knowing, I wouldn't use this rule in one of my adventures, but
nothing else. And I think Jordan had a good point there. Is when they rest, you could just interrupt their rest with a wandering monster, and they don't actually get the rest. So you could definitely make it feel like more of a threat and that urgency by doing that.
100%. Skill clarifications. In some situations, attempting any skill you are not proficient with may, in all caps, increase the DC by 5, one tier of difficulty, or impose disadvantage on a check. Help actions on skills require both players to have proficiency in that skill. What are your thoughts on that? That's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, say that again. That was a lot.
Yeah, in some situations, attempting any skill you're not proficient with may increase the DC by 5. So it makes it harder if you're not proficient, or impose disadvantage on a check. If you're asking for help from another player, then he's requiring that both players be proficient in the skill. Otherwise, it goes up 5. So I have concerns about that, but let's listen to what do you guys
I can see the disadvantage making sense. Theoretically, I'm not sure I like it. It's like you're not proficient in it anyway. You're already not getting the proficiency bonus.
Exactly.
So what would be the point of making it harder? There's no. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't.
If you go to your buddy who's proficient and you're like, hey, can you like investigate this? You're proficient. Like, why would you make them roll at disadvantage still?
Yeah.
Because that guy's proficient. That's like
and you're not.
Me as a pharmacy tech going like, I don't know this medical question the patient's asking, and I go to the pharmacy, the pharmacist who has like proficiency and like the degree, and him
like,
going like, I don't know either. I
don't know. I have to look it up because you don't know. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
That's not logical. I know. I was thinking the same thing. If you ask your buddy who knows how to work on cars to help you with, could you work on my car, and I'll be there to assist you.
Yeah, hand you wrenches or whatever.
He shouldn't be penalized. You're held there to assist, not make it worse. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I think the whole thing doesn't make sense, and I agree with both of you 100% on that. Yeah, so no, I wouldn't make it more difficult.
I always want the logic to work behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if somebody says, hey, do I know the history of this temple that we're about to walk into? I think I would ask you, are you proficient in history?
Yeah.
And if you said, no, I'm not proficient in history at all, then I'd be like, no, you don't know anything.
Yeah.
You know,
why would
and
you
just
know?
and just end it like that, if that's your concern.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
otherwise, if you say yes, I'd be like, okay, well, then I would just tell you the history. Or if I think it's like super obscure history, you know,
Make you roll.
then just make you roll and just put the target DC at whatever I think is
Well, and
fair.
even if they said, do I know anything about this? I think you're obligated to say, why would you know? Like, are you from this area? Was your grandparent from this area and they told you stories? Did you study this? Are you a sage? What is your reasoning behind why you would know?
Yeah.
I think that is a legit reason to ask. And if you're proficient in history, you could say, I'm proficient in history. I've researched this. I've talked to people from this area. You know, that kind of thing.
You could be like, I'm a thief and I'm proficient in history because before I was a thief, I was a map maker.
Yeah.
And I didn't make enough, so I started stealing.
I wanted to
Oh, I love
rob
it. You
this
just
place.
add backstory. Yeah.
Yeah.
Elements
Yeah,
into
that's
that.
good. Yeah, I'm a thief, and I knew I was going to come here, so I looked it up at the Thieves Guild before I came here. I used to do that all the time as a rogue.
Yeah, love it. Rules changes. Nat 20s are only critical on attacks, not saves or skills. What do you think about that? That is the actual rule, though, isn't it, in 5e?
Nat 20s are
Are
only critical?
criticals on attacks, not on saves or skills. I think that's the actual rule. That's written in the Dungeon Master's
Is it
or in the
really?
Player's Handbook or Dungeon Master Guide. One of the
So
two.
if your DC is 25 and your modifier is +2, you shouldn't even try for it because you have no hope of getting it, and a crit's not an automatic pass or not an automatic pass. So you're gonna have players. Why would I bother?
Yeah, exactly. Well,
So I don't know if that's good or not. I mean, I feel like that's probably not, unless that's what you're going for.
Yeah, I don't know. I've had Dungeon Masters be like, it's a DC 25, and like my modifier is just 2, and I'm like,
So no, I can't do that. Yeah.
so I remember in 3rd and 4th edition, I think it was, a nat 20 was an automatic success.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yep.
But in 5th edition, it's not.
How did I not know this? I guess I didn't
I
realize
think-
that it
Yeah.
changed.
Now I might be wrong, and people can light me up in the comments, which is cool because then I learned something, right? That I should know as a dungeon master, and I'm embarrassed, but whatever. But yeah, if I remember right, and I don't have to look it up, but I'm pretty sure that's the rule that you only if you roll a nat 20, you get to you get your normal attack dice. Plus, you get to roll your attack dice again, but this time you don't add your strength modifier to it. So, for example, if I did 1d6 plus 2 damage because I have a +2 on my strength modifier, I would roll 2d6 and add the +2, not 2d6
Right.
plus 4.
Well, yeah, but that's an attack, so crits
Right.
still apply to attacks.
That's what he's
But
saying.
But a critical a nat 20 wouldn't apply to a skill check.
That's right. That's what he's saying.
I guess I'm confused because unless your DC is over 20, how would that ever be a thing? Why would it matter?
Well, okay, so
Unless, like I
up-
said, it's super high and your only chance was to roll a nat 20.
let's suppose that you're trying to
Which is
do
always
a
fine.
religion check, okay, and you're a 15th level character,
Mm-hmm.
okay. So the dungeon master sets the DC to know what this idol you're looking at, what god it is, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And let's suppose that he says that DC is 25. So you have a religion modifier. Did I say history or religion? I can't remember.
I don't remember.
One of the two. Let's say
Religion.
religion.
Yeah, makes
Yeah.
sense.
Okay. So let's say that you're proficient in religion, okay, and you have the necessary modifier that it would be like a +10. So now you could roll 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, or 20 and pass that check.
Right.
Okay? So that's how you pass that check.
Yeah.
First of all, why would a dungeon master, and I asked this, why would any dungeon master set a DC so high that no player could get it? What would be the point of that when he's designing his adventure?
Maybe it's just for a specific player to get it and not every player to do it.
And so then again, the DC is achievable by somebody in the party.
Yeah, and I think my heartburn with that is, so if you have, somebody who is proficient and has that ability, but for whatever reason can't roll the check, and you have another player who's like, what the hell, I'll see if I can roll a crit because it's my only chance, and they roll a nat 20, how much fun is that? That is so exciting in the game. And I think it's sad to take that away. I think that's my only heartburn with it. Yeah. Because obviously I haven't run into this because I don't know how long we've been playing 5e, but it's been years. And I never thought about it before. But I just feel like that is a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you.
I mean, if you do choose to do that like you can't nat 20, that you have to have like a 25 when you have a +2 modifier, it better be some chest with like an armor or some gold. Because like if you do that in story mode, like you have to get past this door, roll like a 25, and like nobody can reach it. You hit a dead end in your story.
Yeah, and that's another mistake that I see that new dungeon masters make is they'll put a door or a portcullis or some kind of obstacle in the character's way, and then put a set of really high DC, and then they can't achieve it. Okay, for whatever, or they fail their roll. They fail their roll, and then the story just simply stops. Nobody can go any further because they didn't put like a workaround, another entrance, or another way to get into that part of the dungeon. Yeah. So you got to be careful with that. But in my games, I have 20 as a success on skills and saves, and on critical hits and all that kind of stuff. So I don't play that rule. Again, Richard here is trying to make a hardcore game, which I get. So
you could accidentally soft.
But I'm saying this rule here, I think, is irrelevant because it's already the rule in 5e if he's playing 5e.
Yeah, if that's already the rule, it's already the rule. Yeah. Maybe they just don't look like us and we just don't really play it. But I would be interested in people putting in the comments, how do you feel about that rule? Is that a missed opportunity?
Yeah, right?
Yeah, because I just think it's sad.
I mean, I'd like to hear people's comments on any of this stuff that we've talked about tonight. I'm sorry.
I think the only worry I'd have with that rule is that you could accidentally soft lock your game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, it just depends on where you put it. Like, you should always have an alternative anyway. Like you were saying.
Yeah.
Is you get stuck. It just doesn't work.
So I try to always make my dungeons with more than one entrance, first of all, and then always more than loop. There's loops in it where, if you can't get past the monster or an obstacle, there is usually another way into that area of the dungeon. So that's just how I design my dungeons personally. So that's how I do it. But yeah. All right. That's all the questions we have tonight. You guys got anything else that you want to add or say?
Thank you for coming. This has been Fat Dragon.
This was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I'll catch you guys on the flip side with another set of questions. And anything that we discussed here, please feel free to tell us how wrong we were or ask us other questions. You have a wonderful day. Bye.